Good morning, good afternoon or good evening. You are live from the living room. This is Miss Ferguson and today I'm going to do a mini mock question. I'm going to do a 4-marker and well done first of all for actually picking up the phone or going online and just actually revising. It sometimes takes a lot of motivation to do that, so just keep going. I'm going to try and make this as interactive as possible. However, if you prefer, you could listen to this whilst you're travelling on the bus, because I am going to be narrating everything. You can skip through it as well, but there will be visual clues so that you can read it as well. But I might try and make some suggestions as to how you can take this further and what you can do, or you can do it along with me if you wish to, and see if you are on the right lines. Hopefully this will be useful, and I would appreciate feedback, but please not in the comments. Come and talk to the drama team. So, 4-marker today, and we are trying to not make drama out of this and be a flamingo as opposed to an ostrich, because ostriches bury their heads in the sand, whereas we want to fess up and really attack our revision, but not necessarily make it as onerous as we need to. Nobody wants to work harder than they have to. So we are carrying on this philosophy of doubling up to make revision half, okay, as explained in lessons. So I have my clear space of my table and we are going to go through a question today. So alongside, I'm going to have my step-by-step guide for a 4-marker, and these sort of hints and tips will kind of serve you well for 4 markers, 6 markers or 8 markers, and so we're just going to go through those first. Okay, so step 1, overall, just don't forget that section A is a test as well as to how well you know this play. So how well do you know Kindertransport, its themes, its characters, the moments of it, and you know, it's kind of goes with that doubling up to make half, because I've said to you from your theatre evaluation for section B as well, it pays to know the specific moments. So one thing that might help you as part of your revision is to actually break the play down. What moments happen? Do I know what happens when and who? So definitely, if you want to stop now and before you go any further, a good thing to do would be to work through the moments of the play. And if you want to as well, I do have a resource called the Kindertransport map, which is page by page which characters are on it and what happens on that page. It's a bit cryptic at first, but once you get your head into it, and you can follow through exactly what happens. So if you want to have that resource, to come and see me. So essentially, step 1 for any of these questions is remember to show off your knowledge of the play. Do I know the correct moments? Step 2, work out the root word of the question. So we've talked about this in lesson. There are many root words that they might use. It might be explain, it might be describe, it might be evaluate, it might be compare. But all those types of words will tell you exactly what the question wants. The clues are in the question. They're not essentially trying to trip you up. So make sure you identify that root word before you go further. Calculate how much you need to do. You don't need to work too hard to get the right responses in the 4-mark questions. Furthermore, time-wise, also work that out as well. How long should I be spending on this once I've got up to my speed? So for a 4-marker, how long should you be spending? Just giving you some thinking time. It's 4 minutes essentially if you want to really hit this paper and make sure you have that backup time for yourself at the end. So stick to 4 minutes. 4 minutes for mark of question, minute a mark. So check you are addressing the question and what it's asking you to do, and then once you're ready, give it a go. Other hints include, if in doubt, mention how this will impact or affect the audience. That's pretty much going to happen in most kind of questions you get. She says, making a massive assumption, I am not an exam writer, but, you know, generally this is a theme that kind of comes up in the questions that we've very much created ourselves internally and that we've seen. And also, don't forget, you can bullet point in section A. You can't in section B. There is quality of response there. So you can bullet point if it helps you with that speed and you are concise enough to still get the main points across. Bullet point, it will not hurt you, okay? So I am going to go through those steps with you and do it myself. And this is the question that I have chosen for us to use as an example, okay? So I'm just going to read it first, then I'm going to follow it through step by step. Okay, so the question is, explain how, as an actor, you would say the following line vocally to reflect the character from the play text you have studied. Now, I haven't put down in writing there, but you would then have possibly a table or possibly something else or some sort of thing where you know you had to look up the quote. And the quote that I'm going to say today for you is from Helga. You are wasting a chance that hardly anyone else has been given. There's no later left either. Okay, so that quote again, just to repeat it. Okay, you are wasting a chance that hardly anyone else has been given, and there's no later left either. Okay, now, being slightly naughty, I should have written that out for you, but you'll just have to remember that for now. Okay, so step one then, if I'm following my own rules. Okay, that quote there captures, obviously it tells us it's Helga, which is helpful. Most often I am guessing that it'll do that for you and you won't have to recall, because it shouldn't be a requirement that you have to remember quotes for this exam. It's too hard, you've got enough on your plate. So I'm to show off my knowledge of that. That is Helga, very much at the beginning of the play when she's preparing her daughter to go on the kinder transport in the morning. We know that she's sewing with her and sort of teaching her these last few things and trying to pass on and cram this last bit of information she wants to pass on to her daughter, and that she may never ever see her again. So that is something that's significant to the play and something that is me showing off my knowledge. Also the fact that this is her mother. But this quote here, if you actually think of the language for a second, I don't want to get too much into it in an English sense, but it does help you a little bit in the sense of it very much implies, and that fits with the context when you think about it, that there is a sense of doom in her, and there is a sense of impending, and that sort of sense of not knowing whether or not she's going to see her daughter is definitely there. She's quite almost aggressive in how she talks about her future with her daughter, and how she's trying to get her daughter to sort of take this moment seriously. But her daughter has the limitation of being young and not really understanding what's going on. I don't think many people would have understood what was going on in these days. So, okay, so that sort of information there I'm going to incorporate into my answer in a moment. But I want to first of all work out the root word. If you haven't worked it out, it is very much this concept of explain. So I need to make sure, because it's an explain question, that I'm saying what and why, and not just describing what is happening in this moment. Okay, so I'm going to explain my answer, I'm going to give a reason and ensure I explain why I believe that and why that fits. So I'm just going to go forward to step 3. So I'm going to calculate how much I need to do. So I know that this is a 4 marker, and I know that I've got 2 minutes. Now I haven't got anyone telling me in this question how much of an answer I need to give. So I'm going to have to use my noggin a little bit in terms of determining how much I need to write. So it fits that I would probably need to hit this 4 marker 2 things that I would say, and then give 2 explanations, 2 whys. So 2 times 2 equals your 4 markers. So that's the philosophy I'm going to work with. Sometimes it might say that you must give two things and 2 reasons. So always double check that the question doesn't actually tell you to do that, because if you don't, you might get penalised if you don't follow that pattern. Okay, so I'm using my noggin. I'm going with that as my structure, okay? Now, I now know as well, to address this question, that I must talk about, it's telling me vocally, as in using the voice. Okay, now, I'm not expecting you to plan your answers to these questions. They're such short, sharp questions that you probably will not have time. But I'm going to speak aloud my thoughts because I'm doing this as sort of a helpful revision. So being that little voice training you in your head, okay? So, I know that I've got to use vocal techniques. So I'm just going to start in my head going, right, what do I remember are vocal techniques? So, power, pitch, pace, pause, punch, volume, tone, and emphasis. And not always going to happen, but with this play, accent is potentially key. So I'm not going to write about all of those. I don't need to. I've already decided that my structure says that I'm going to do this. So I'm going to pick the most relevant, or at least the first two that come to my mind at the moment, okay? So I know I'm going to pick two of those, explain how and why we would use them, and then that should hopefully give us the marks, okay? So also remembering that I've got my other hints here of, if in doubt, mention how it will impact the audience, and don't forget I can bullet point. I find it easier myself to write in continuous prose, but afterwards, once I've done that, you can think about, if you would prefer to go with the bullet pointing method, how you would shorten it as well. I'm not going to do that, but you could do that for yourself, okay? So, I know that to address the question, I've got to talk about voice. If I don't talk about voice, I'm not going to get the mark. So I start talking about movement, it's not going to happen, okay? So, let's try and give this a go. So, I'm gonna just help myself, because the pressure's on now, by making sure I'm responding to the question. So I'm going to use that as an actor. I would say this line with emphasis, particularly when I said no of no later left, because Helga is stressing the fact that her future with her daughter at this point is uncertain. This is just me, you know, absolutely crossing the T's, etc. This would impact the audience as we would realise the difficulty of the choice. Obviously the choice to go on the Kindle Transport. So, okay. So what I've done here is give an answer that fits. I would say how I would use the emphasis in terms of stressing the fact of no on no later. So I've said how, I've said why. Essentially, that is 2 marks in the bag already, okay? Now, that was me overkilling it. I'm not a fast writer. I'm not a clear writer, but you guys could essentially do that better, and you could, as I say, break it down into bullet points should you wish. Now, I've already used emphasis, so I can't use that again. If I repeat that, then it's very unlikely that they'll give me marks for it. So I need to give a different example of one of these things about vocally. So what's it going to be? Okay, so I could say accent, however, it's not the most suitable. It's obvious that she's going to be speaking in a German accent because we know she's German, but that just doesn't fit this moment particularly, so I'm going to eliminate that. I think I'm going to go for tone, just because I can get a sense of the emotional quality of this at the moment, okay? Now, one top tip with tone is that you must always describe the tone and how it's used, okay? So I can't just say I would use tone because I need to attach an adjective to it, okay? So I'm going to go for my final 2 marks here. I would also use, and I'm going to go just quite simple here because it fits. I would use a sad tone when delivering this. Also, because, and I appreciate my grammars just because I'm improvising and thinking off the top of my head, it's not the best, but it'll get an answer. This also because, use a sad tone, because the moment shows that she has to accept she may never see her daughter again. Now, I could, and I probably would do, but I'm slightly getting scruffy with my writing now, and you can listen to it anyway. But I might afterwards say something like, this would make the audience empathise with her because they realise how her motivations are true as a mother and that it couldn't be an easy decision. Alright, so I have said what, vocally, how and why. I have answered the question. Okay, so hopefully that should be 4 marks. So essentially you could stop there. You could have a go at this yourself. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Could you write something about some of the others? Give it a go. Otherwise, next steps could be, what if, okay, let's take out, we've got keep the root word, okay, but if you change the question about a bit, and this is where your revision is going to get super clever, okay, so if you changed out not the root word, but the sort of area of the question, if you changed vocally to movement, or to spatially, or to any other kind of key element of drama, which, you know, generally might fit that sort of area, could you still answer it? What would you need to change? Obviously these areas, but would you still be able to follow that format? Essentially, yes, you could. So why don't you give it a go, change that to something like movement, and answer in that same format, okay? If you want to show me, I'll always have a little look and just double check you're on the right track. So ask yourself, what if it was slightly different? What if I changed the question to this instead? And that will give you some really, really clever revision. Now, back to the double up to make half. If you've still got time left in your revision slot, why not think about section B? Why not think about how in the theatre production that you have seen, how did a specific character use their voice? Because essentially it's the same kind of question. Obviously we know for section B it would be longer than a 4 marker, but could you give many moments and many examples and talk about the effectiveness of how you use that to just expand and grow that? So you're just connecting all those pathways in your brain to kind of go, yeah, I see this exam as a whole, and it will help you. So essentially that's it. If you've got any questions, if you've got any thing that you need me to clarify, please come and see me. But for now, happy revising.